Hey, what's going on, everyone? Having a little bit of reception issues today. Hopefully, it kind of pans out. I'm going to have a guest today, one of my good friends, Mike Bledsoe, on the show. And let me just figure that. Just kind of get this thing. Diago, good to see you. I see some people jumped in. Good to see you guys. Mike, what is up? Okay, got Mike here. Tech savvy guys, as you guys know. I think I sent the invite. Nice.
Yo, what's
Finally was
up?
able finally was able to get a live going without my girlfriend being around to show me how to do everything. This is a monumentous accomplishment for me personally. So so I'm
I
like,
think this
man,
might be this is the first live I've done with someone where there wasn't a bunch of problems.
okay, cool. So see,
We're doing great.
if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself, and sure enough, I did it myself today. So so Mike, thanks for jumping on the live. I know we're going to kind of convert this to a podcast later. I just wanted to kind of get you on because I've been inviting a lot of people on the podcast that have gone on an honest health journey themselves and have been doing it for a very long time. And also just kind of spreading the message about like what real medicine looks like, which is a lot easier to understand than what a lot of people think. And I just wanted to kind of get your perspective because I know you've been in the fitness and health industry for a really long time, and you've probably seen a lot of things change. I don't know, I'm sure some things for the better, some things for the worst. But I just wanted to kind of get your perspective in terms of where the state of health is going in America in general, especially now with 9 out of 10 American adults being metabolically unhealthy. Depending on the stats you look at, close to 65 to 75% of Americans now either overweight or obese. And close to, if you round it up slightly, close to like 900,000 Americans that are dying just from heart attacks every single year, like very preventable heart attacks, and like a myriad of other disorders, which I've listed on a couple of other lives, that accumulate to close to 2 million preventable deaths every single year. And by preventable, I mean just the most minor attention to health conscious choices, not even the amount of effort like you would go through or like I would go through. It's not even totally necessary a lot of times, could prevent the vast majority of those deaths. And I was just another thing that I've noticed is um, because of like America's reliance on symptom management healthcare, which is profitable and easier to do than changing the person that caused the disease, et cetera, et cetera. I just also rarely see anyone get better, even if they do pursue kind of like a journey of health and wellness, whether it be mental wellness or physical wellness. They may see some minor improvement in symptoms, but then typically, you see them 5 or 10 years later, even a lot of people that have gone on spiritual journeys. And it's kind of like business as usual. It's all the same, nothing really has changed. Of course, they say they've changed, but just on the outside, it's kind of like, I don't know, man, I really don't see much change. And I don't know if you have the same perspective. It's totally okay if you have a completely different perspective as well. I just wanted to kind of let you take over here and just get your take on your perspective.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I think that I'll start off with we live in a time where people are going to be living, we're going to have a lot of people living into the hundreds because of technology, biotech, um, all these peptides that are coming online, all the biohack, basically all the biohacking tools out there, right? Like I'm in the cold plunge 3 or 4 days a week. I do contrast therapy once a week. I sit in an inipi, a sweat lodge once a week. I do these things that are going to give me longevity, and then on top of that, I have access to all the healthy stuff. I can get blood work. I get blood work done 3 times a year. Like we are on top of it, right? If I were to get sick, it it wouldn't be. We would see it coming. Like it's not going to happen, right? It's not. I'm not going to be like, oh my god, I got cancer. That was weird. I didn't see where that was coming from. It would be caught very early on, and it may not even be registered as such before it got out of hand. So it's the easiest to be the healthiest possible in all of human history, I think, and it's also the easiest to be a slob, and it's the easiest to what I mean by that is like, I don't want to be too offensive to people, but like the
Mike, on my show, if you haven't seen any of the episodes, be offensive as you want. Trust me. Do not feel censored here at
well,
all. Maybe
I want to
Facebook will
be
censor me eventually, but you shouldn't feel censored, you
I
know?
want to be kind to people, because that's usually what gets people to take action. Some people need a slap in the face, but it's so there's so many conveniences. Like Amazon is one of the makes some of the most money in the whole planet, right? Jeff Bezos is one of the top um, billionaires on the planet, and the reason is because they give convenience. The convenience is valued above so many things.
Mm-hmm.
If you pay attention, Alex Hormozy wrote a book called $100 Million Offers.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree with everything Alex Hormozy says, and he's brilliant at business. Like I would always listen to him about that, and so he's got this thing where it's like, how do you create value in the world? Where you try the two things you've got to reduce. You got to create value. You got to make believable results for people. But on the things you try to reduce is effort and time. So the amount of time it takes to get the result and the amount of effort it takes to get the result, people basically, that word is convenience. You combine those two things, it's convenient. And we have a whole world of people where, like, biologically, we're driven to try to conserve as many calories as possible. If you look at it from like an evolutionary biology
Mm-hmm.
perspective, we're trying to conserve energy, so we're wired that way. So least amount of effort to get my calories, and so it takes in the last 50 years, it's required more and more effort in order to be healthy. And we also have the tools available to be healthy. So it's a very interesting thing to watch, because the only people, I think the point you're getting at is, the only people that are unhealthy are the people everyone is choosing their way there, in the United States anyway. Like, we live in a country where there is more upward mobility financially. You can be born in a very poor family and become a billionaire. Like, that's I know a guy who's almost a billionaire. He was a poor Iowa farm boy. He's 70 now, but like, these things can be done. This can't be done in other countries. And and I say that because a lot of times people say things are expensive. It's like, well, figure out how to make the money to take care of yourself in this case. And it doesn't actually need to be that expensive.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to mention too, you were talking about medicine, is like, the frame that I hold on medicine is what you take before you're sick. This whole idea that the symptom management of like Western medicine is like, the average American doesn't think about medicine until they have a symptom that is so annoying that they're going to go to a doctor, and it's a symptom oriented solution.
Mm-hmm.
So usually it's just hiding it. And I think that's what you're getting at too, where people go on a health journey, or they see a doctor and then they actually don't get better. And even people in the spiritual community or the conscious community, whatever you want to call it, the amount of mental rewiring that we have to have around, I mean, I witness this with people all the time, is people who I think should know better are still symptom oriented. They're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
why can't I get rid of this belly fat right here? Why do I have this rash on my leg? Why can't I sleep at night? And they're like trying to find a solution to that problem, instead of asking themselves, what is out of balance? What is not, there's something out of harmony with the way I'm living that's causing this symptom. And there's other symptoms that I'm experiencing that I'm not even aware of. And if I were to, so often I see someone like, I really like Chinese medicine, because it's all about it's like, you're either too hot, too cold, too damp or too dry, and they look at different parts of your body, and then they bring that into harmony. And you're like, oh, if you're damp and hot, let's get you put you in a process like dietarily, environmentally, things like that, to put you in a more dry, cool environment, or dry, cool internal environment in your body, and then everything comes into harmony, and then all these symptoms just dissipate. And people are like, oh, that's so that's so I think about, like, in a lot of cultures where they think about medicine as something you just do before you get sick. You, like, if you got sick, it's because you weren't engaging with medicine, and medicine is movement. It's, food is medicine, and a lot of like, I participate in some rituals from, like, the Lakota or the Shipibo or something like that, where these people are practicing medicine all the time but it's nothing. It's just part of daily life.
Yeah. And I think, Mike, it's okay. You can refer to it as medical drugs. A lot of times they kind of conceal it as medicine and gives it like a softer name, like a more well thought out name. But really, it's just like a drug at the end of the day. And a lot of people have to come to that realization. And I just find it, I don't know, like, what's your take? Have you ever gotten people, let's say like the average American, he's like 40 or 50 pounds overweight. They're on high blood pressure, high cholesterol medication, probably a couple of meds. And they're like, well, my blood work looks fine, so I'm fine. I know you have gotten that occasionally. I just wondering, like, what your reaction to that is, because I do hear it sometimes. It's like the person's like 50 pounds overweight, they're in their 50s, and they're like, yeah, I take like, my blood work is fine, but I'm taking all these drugs to basically suppress the symptoms and get my ranges into the normal, whatever the normal range even means. And I feel fine. And I'm like, dude, you are like a complete mess from start to finish, and you've numbed yourself out for so long in so many different elaborate ways that you don't even know, like, what mental and physical well-being even is anymore at that point. And I just find that really is one of the reasons that people don't change, because I just honestly feel like American culture has normalized mental and physical pathology to such a far extent that sick people don't even think they're sick anymore, because the guy next to them happens to be exponentially way more sick.
Yeah. The one that I get that I've seen the most is, I go, well, how's your gut health? What do you think what's going on with your gut health? And people all the time are going, oh, it's great. I go, okay, well, what do your shits look like? And they go, I don't know. I'm like, well, you don't know what your shits look like. How do you know what your gut's doing? Like, you never look at them. Never look at them. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, you're unaware. Like, that's, like, I look at every single one, and I'm looking, and because it takes about 12 to 18 hours for something you eat to make it out the rear end. And that's going to tell me, how did my body respond to that particular food? Or it may not be the food. It may be I had a lot of stress online and I passed that food too quickly, or it wasn't digested properly. And so there's little things like that where it's so obvious to us, where we go, well, just look in the toilet and you would know. And then 9 times out of 10, when I ask someone how their gut's doing, and I tell them to look in the toilet, and then a week later they come back and they go, man, it is really jacked up. Like, they don't even have to know what it's supposed to look like to know that it's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really simple. Like, the blood work thing is interesting, because it comes down to how you feel. But as you were saying, a lot of people don't even know how they feel. They're so separated from their body. It's incredible.
Do you have like a checklist of how, like, something people can go down to know they're actually normalizing mental and physical pathology versus actually genuinely being healthy?
No.
No? Okay. I have
No.
one. But this show is focused on you, so we'll keep it that way. Well, do you think one of the reasons is I feel like, especially in the Western culture, for a lot of people, it's just the cultural norms or core values are just not sustainable, not conducive to mental and physical health. And a lot of times I just feel somehow the American population has kind of been brainwashed to think like what's not important is important, and what is important isn't important. Intellectually, they may tell you, yeah, mental and physical health is important for sure, et cetera, et cetera. But then their actions speak like a way different tone. They may say it's like the most important thing, but then you look at their core priorities list and it's like ninth on the list. Basically, it never gets done and stuff
Right.
of that sort.
Well, I think, people confuse normal with healthy. And a lot of things have been normalized. It's, I think it's just a total degradation that originates with the education system. It's, the idea that what's normalized is at 5 or 6 years old, sticking a kid in a desk with 30 other kids inside of a room with limited sunlight for 6, 7, 8 hours a day. And if you don't do a good job of suppressing your emotions, then you're going to be punished by taking away your physical activity. And then not only that, we all know that the food they serve is total crap, and that becomes normalized. And what's interesting is if you start talking to people who send their kids to school, and they'll become very defensive of everything going on really quickly because they don't want to think of themselves as a bad parent. Like, oh, I'm just sticking my kid in school and this is the result. There's no better indoctrination process than what's happening in the school system. I mean, you take someone from the age of and a lot of these kids are being captured at 3 years old. They're doing preschool at a really young age. And I say captured because their minds have been captured. 8 hours of their waking life is with somebody that we have no idea what they're telling them. And they're picking up poor habits from other people's kids. Like the idea I was homeschooled all the way through, so I have a very different perspective on the world. And the older I get, the more I realize how different my perspective is. I have a few friends that were also homeschooled all the way through. And we all, when we get in the same room, we all basically find each other and hang out. And when other people enter the conversation, it's almost, they're almost confused about our perspective on everything because there wasn't the 15 years of indoctrination wasn't there. So we were left to creating our own structures. Like I didn't have to be at school at a certain time. We just had way more choices at a young age. And, what was normal for all of us. Ben Greenfield's one of these guys. And another friend of mine, Jesse Elder. And everyone's very successful and happy and very independent in how they live their lives. They're not normal, right? And so
it's kind of weird how they're not the normal ones. It's like that should be just the average.
Yeah.
These
are some of the healthiest in mind and body people I know. And we've never had a problem. There hasn't been this battle. I mean, I won't say we never had a problem. I mean, I've had my own problems for sure, but compared to other people, the way that we're able to navigate those problems is very different, very easy. And I think a big part of it is just the lack of indoctrination.
Yeah, and it's so strange how people have accepted that lifestyle of mental and physical pathology, and also, if you've noticed, actually defended it, although it really doesn't serve them in any possible good way. I don't know if you've seen, I mean, it was very obvious during the pandemic and stuff of that sort. And I'm like, dude, it's, like how much more obvious can you make that this belief system is not helping you in any way? like being overweight, having to take like an entire bottle of Xanax before you get up, like when you get up in the morning just to have enough energy to go work at work. I mean, like, when are you going to say, like, dude, this is beyond retarded to live this way? It's not normal at all. It's 100% mental and physical illness to the max. And unfortunately, like, I'm just going to go out and say it on a limb. Like, unfortunately, these people have kids a lot of times, and then they pass these belief systems down to their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And their kids then pass these belief systems, and it usually gets worse from generation to generation. Luckily, sometimes it breaks the line, and it starts over. But most of the time, it's just like, uh, like I always say, like the biggest virus of all is a belief system that doesn't facilitate health conscious choices, the most dangerous virus of all, because it spreads just like a virus from person to person, and then it inflicts the individual, and then eventually ends up killing them, but it also spreads it to another person before that original organism ends up dying. And I'm like, dude, how much more obvious can it get? Like, okay, you are now, 30, 40 pounds overweight. You're like on 5 medical drugs, and you feel worse than ever before and look worse than ever before. And you're still defending this belief system and still doing it. A lot of times people, like, I got this from Warren Williams. He's like another Czech guy. And he actually said it like in a very interesting way. And I never looked at it this way. And he's like, man, to be sick and very overweight, it takes like a lot of effort and dedication. And I never heard it say that way, but he's like, when I kind of thought about it, I'm like, dude, that is totally true. It takes a lot of money. It takes around like $8,000 to $16,000 a year to make yourself overweight and then maintain that body. That's already a decent amount of money for a lot of people. 8 to 16, and it takes a lot of effort, to go buy that food, force yourself to eat that food every single day, then kind of look in the mirror, not like who you're seeing, and then go and continue to do the very behaviors that are leading to the symptoms you're not liking at all, year after year for many, many years. And I'm like, oh shit, he has like actually a really good point. It does take quite a bit of effort. I don't know what your perspective is on that.
Yeah. You're either going to pay for it now or you're going to pay for it later. Like I have buddies who that I'm friends with from the high school years. I'm in a text message thread with them. Maybe they're watching this, who knows? But I'm in a text message thread with them, and I'm definitely the odd man out. There's 4 of us in the thread. Two of the guys, well, one of the guys has been on Adderall or Ritalin or Adderall since the 2nd grade. The other one, I think, got on it in like junior high school. So 2 of these guys. And they're in their 40s. They're still taking Adderall every day. And it's become incredibly normalized. And when health issues pop up, sometimes I'll get the call or a question, and they never like the answer. They never like the answer because I start asking them about, well, what medications are you on? And it's like, no, I came here for health advice. Like,
That is health advice, dummy.
like, I can't help you. There's another guy I was talking to, because I'm sure you're aware, but yeah, I operate in the psychedelic world quite a bit, and this guy was getting some ketamine therapy, and he was saying it really wasn't helping his anxiety and depression that much. And I just, on an intuitive hit, I said, well, what other psychoactive medications are you on? And he listed off some, one of them was like a SSRI, and another one was like a Xanax. And I'm like, yeah, the ketamine therapy is not going to help you, because whatever gets brought to the surface, you're just turning around and suppressing it. Like, you can't actually process things psycho-emotionally, because you can't have your cake and eat it too. It's like, and so you're gonna pay for it now or later. Is like, either put the work in now. I get in the cold plunge. It takes a little mental, like, all right, I'm doing this now. That's energy I'm spending and willpower I'm spending to get in there. But that is one of many things that is going to allow me to still wipe my own ass when I'm 100 years old. And they're going to have to pay someone else to do it, or that's going to cost their kids something so they can have someone else wipe their ass. And so, it is uh, monumentally more expensive to be unhealthy.
Hmm.
It may not be today, but you know, if you look at like the financial situation of the average American and uh, their health, it's very similar. You know, it's very short sighted. People don't have much money in savings. Like there's a lot of financial obesity. I look at both these things at the same time. I go, it's the same mentality that has somebody be poor as it is to be unhealthy, because it's doing something convenient today and paying for it later on. So you're gonna have to keep working later on. So yeah, I don't know if I quite answer your question, but that was where my mind went.
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying in terms of having to pay for it later, but just to make it very clear to the audience, I'm going to be the negative copy. Like you're actually paying for it right now. Like financially, I mean, looking at the numbers, it's like I mentioned, eight for my calculation, $8,000 to $16,000 every year. Like that money can be way better spent on a myriad of other things, you know,
What,
creating passive cash
what are they
flow,
spending money on? You just talking about junk food or what?
eating out, alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like if a person also, although it's not included in this number here that I'm quoting, the average American spends also about $2,700 to $3,200 a year on travel as well. Now, in my opinion, like if a person is like on medical drugs they don't want to be on, or is very, they should be spending that money on like health courses or books or getting a mentor to basically get rid of what's really decreasing the quality of their life, because even like how healthy you are mentally and physically sets the ceiling for the quality of your life. So even if you are like very doing really well in the external world on a myriad of different levels, let's say you're doing an A in every single category there, but your health is like at a C, your quality of life is at a C. You know, if your health
Totally.
is at a D, it's like your quality of life is at a D. So in my opinion, it's like, dude, you should be focused on getting that grade up from a C to at least like a B, you know, or like at least an A minus or something of that sort. It doesn't have to be perfect. Instead of spending that $3,000 in another 2-week European trip or even more. And then after 2 weeks with that sugar high at best, you're right back to the lifestyle that led to all those problems, but you're short a couple of $1,000s that could have been spent on getting a mentor or whatever,
Yeah.
taking a health course to get rid of a lot of those health challenges. And it totally goes under the radar of a lot of people. You know, you've been a coach for a very long time. It's like yourself. It's like, okay, I have $8,000 to $16,000 a year to spend on alcohol and junk food, but I don't have $5,000 a year to spend on organic food, which is what an organic diet of 2,000 calories a day roughly would cost. And they would easily, quickly say, I don't have that money, you know?
Totally.
But I'm like, dude, how are you getting $8,000 to $16,000 a year in alcohol, fast food, movies, and all that BS? But you just told me you don't have $5,000 for organic food. Or how do you not have $3,000 for a mentor, health mentor, but you just spent $3,000 going on a trip to Europe, no problem, and it didn't do anything for you but give you a sugar high at best and a few pictures where you don't even feel comfortable with how you look in the pictures, posting them online, et cetera, et cetera. And they're like, oh, well, and they kind of develop some inference or some story because unfortunately, in order to cope with a lot of that pathology, you have to create belief systems to justify those actions, to not feel bad about those actions. And that could take like many years to override and fix. And that's what oftentimes keeps people in that loop. But going back to the instant cost, if you average out the total health cost per citizen in the US, it's about $14,000 a year. And it's as a nation, we're the sickest we've ever been, period, and possibly even the sickest nation in the face of human history altogether. With still spending $14,000 a year on health issues. And more startling is the number one reason for personal bankruptcy in the US is health issues,
Mm.
accounting for close to 70% of all personal bankruptcies. So when you take into consideration 9 out of 10 Americans are metabolically sick right now, and the number one reason for bankruptcies is just health issues, I think like if this isn't dealt with at a national level, uh, the US is going to be in quite a bit of financial problems in the near future, not even too far down the line. I don't know what
Yeah.
your take is
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah. I mean, I was not familiar with those numbers. That's, it makes sense. It makes sense, like that health problems would cause most of the financial, like, bankruptcies. That's, yeah, now that I think about it, a lot of time, there's either unwise investments were made, or someone's health declined, they couldn't work anymore, and all that. One of the things I think about is I spend $200 a month on my quote unquote health insurance. It's actually a health share plan. Everyone can check it out, Zion Health. If you just go to Zion Health, if you're somebody who isn't relying on the medical, here's what you were getting at too, is like, if you're not in some chronic disease state out of choice because you've been making poor lifestyle habits, something like this is like way better. Basically, any particular thing that I'm experiencing, I cover the first 1,000. After that, they cover everything, no cap.
Hmm.
So if you're a healthy, like, what people are paying how much for health insurance right now? Like 600, 700, $800 a month on,
Yeah.
and it's not
I
good.
guess I pay like 340, but my plan isn't that great. I'm like, damn, I got to look into this plan. Thanks for mentioning it.
It's like I tell everybody about it because it's so good. They've been my fiance and I are both using it, and the few times we've had to use it is just wonderful. And they cover international, so
Hmm.
I don't have to get international insurance when I travel, and they'll pay for, say something happens to me here and I need to go to Mexico to get a medical treatment. They'll pay for the Mexican medical treatment. Your insurance plan in the U.S. is not going to do that. It'll have to be based in the U.S. So I'm saving, what I figured the equivalent health insurance is probably about $600. I'm saving $400 a month, it's $4,800 a year. If you're just willing to take some personal responsibility for your health, you can save $5,000 a year on just your insurance. So there's your $5,000 right there. And yeah, I mean, I remember when I had that realization with the alcohol. It's funny, I forget that people drink. I love a good scotch or a good glass of wine here and there. Like, if you catch me in wine country, I'll definitely go to a tasting. But I don't even really enjoy it that much. But it's more a social thing. But maybe once or twice a year I'll have a drink. And I remember when I was running my gym and I would have these guys come in like, oh, I can't afford your, I was running a CrossFit gym at the time. I can't afford your $150 a month coaching. I was like, oh, okay. I was like, yeah, but I saw you, because I was a college student.
Meanwhile,
I
they
was like,
pull
I
up in
saw you
like
at the
a
bar.
Mercedes, you know?
Yeah, well, I saw you at the bar. What's your bar top? What was your bar tab like the other night? And this one guy ended up signing him up for membership right there, because I was like asking him what his bar tab was. It's like, dude, you're spending $100 a weekend on bar tab. You can train, just don't drink for 2 nights, and you're good to go. Alcohol's expensive,
Hmm.
and one of the reasons I don't drink is because the hangover is so expensive that, like, you lose a whole day of your life, just vanishes, and it's never that much fun. So, I mean, yeah, once I discovered, mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, drinking alcohol seemed really ridiculous to me. I was like, oh, it's a more enjoyable high. It's actually good for me. And I feel great the next day. No brainer. It's, alcohol seems silly. And not only that, a bag of mushrooms is going to be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, and just the collateral damage of alcohol, what it's done to society as a whole, I mean, I forget the number of how many people die from just drunk driving accidents every year. Like, actually die, but probably 10 times that get injuries for the rest of their life, that you can't get rid of, etc. I think it was like 100-some thousand or something of that sort. Um,
Yeah, I think alcohol is a great drug for controlling the population. Anything that depresses the system. It's like, so many things that are normal in our society. This is why conspiracy theorists get so up in arms, is because it is almost hard to believe that it's not on purpose, that there's some person or group that's trying to get people to forget who they are, you know, and to dissociate from who they are and get caught up in whatever illusion is on TV or whatever. Is it on purpose? I don't know. But I get why people believe it's on purpose. It seems like it could be like there's a comic book, or you read 1984 or something like that. You're like,
Hmm.
wow, it seems like it's on purpose. It may not be. It may be, but it's sinister whether it's unconscious behavior or not.
Yeah, I think there's also the aspect of like uh, just a lot of people honestly can't handle like honest, like real freedom. I mean, they say they do want it, but it takes like a lot of personal responsibility to be genuinely free, you know?
Hmm.
Especially when the mistakes fall back on you if something happens, you know what I mean? It's not like you're dependent. If you're genuinely free, you're not dependent on anyone, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of times it's just easier to kind of stay in that childhood state of like having a boss, you know, or et cetera, having someone telling you what to do and stuff of that sort. I don't know if you agree with that at all, or
Oh yeah.
probably, I mean, for sure.
Yeah,
Being homeschooled,
yeah, I think, yeah.
definitely not going
People
to
go
have an
from their
opposite answer.
parents, school teachers, to a boss. You can find the majority of the population has never not had an authority figure telling them when to be, where to be, and how to be. You know, like that's fucking. It's crazy. It's really, really crazy. Yeah. The thing about being free, the gift of freedom is wisdom, and that's and wisdom is earned through paying attention and what experiencing feedback. So the average person is completely insulated from reality. So somebody's at a corporate job, right? And every month the same paycheck comes in every single month until as long as that job lasts. Like the company can make more money, the company can make less money. The company could be going through all sorts of fluctuations, but the reality for that person who's insulated from the rest of the world by all of management who is above them, right? So if you're in a hierarchical corporate environment and there's three people between, then there there's like layers. Each person is a layer. Like the CEO is exposed to ultimate reality. Like they're getting they know what's going on with the company at all times. And then, you have the executive staff, and then you have the managers and all this. And so by the time it gets down to the average professional, they have no idea what's actually going on. So if the economy takes a turn, they lose their job, it's like a complete and total surprise. They're like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. I'll tell you what, the CEO did. They knew it was coming. And so the gift of that is like, and this is why CEOs get in trouble, is because they sell off their stock options right before uh, company tanks or whatever, but they're the only ones that actually know. Everyone else is in the dark. But that's an example of how people are insulated. The same thing happens in a welfare state where you make a poor choice, and then, well, the state will step in and take care of you a little bit. And I think, I can't speak for most people or not, but there's a lot of people who are uncomfortable with the state helping them out, and they go, "Oh, I'm getting a welfare check. I need to get my ass in gear." And in those situations, that's, I think that's great. But I think things like church organizations could also be the ones that are actually responsible for that versus a federal government type thing, or even state. And then a large part of the population there's a lot of evidence that it just cushions them from reality, and they're very comfortable having someone else take care of them. Very, very comfortable. And there's people will not get jobs because if they make a certain amount of money, they'll lose, Social Security, they'll lose whatever program they're on. And so they're cushioned from reality, and these people don't get to attain wisdom because they're out of touch with reality. How could they be wise? And then these people have children and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And they're at an incredible disadvantage due to the insulation from reality. And so, yeah, we have an entire population full of children who are raising children, who are in charge of children. I've
Mm-hmm.
got jury duty in a few weeks. I guarantee you the judge is a child. I'll walk in, and even, the person who's, wearing the religious robe, asking for authority from the room, will themselves be a child by their nature. They're also insulated.
Mm-hmm. I find, I don't know if you've seen these patterns with corporate work or any kind of work with a lot of bureaucracy, but it kind of keeps the adult, and there's a lot of correlation between the forever child and the worker in that situation. Because look at the comparison. I mean, think about it. When you're a kid, um, you know, you had to do your chores and your dad gave you an allowance. Oh, when you're a worker, you got to make sure to get your project on time and your allowance is a paycheck now. Oh, then as a kid, you better behave so you can go out with your friends on the weekend. It's the same thing in like a corporate environment. Oh, you better do your tasks, show up on time so you can hold your job, so you can have Saturday and Sunday off and hang out with your friends. Oh, you want to go, to the river with your friends on the weekend? You got to ask your dad. Oh, you want to go to the river with your friends on the weekend as an adult? You got to ask your boss. And it's
Yeah.
basically just changing one biological dad to like another form, but basically just another dad figure. And the weird thing is a lot of times, I don't know if you've seen this, but this takes a long time, many decades to actually hit. But a lot of people seek those positions for the biological safety of those positions, right?
Mm-hmm.
The consistency of work. There's a lot of responsibility that's delegated to other people or whatever, the CEO, and you just really have to do this one job. You know what I mean? And it's easier just to focus on that one task. But in a sense, as you know, like any time there's a disconnect between like what you want, who you honestly are, and who you're portraying yourself or who you're being during the week, the wider that gap, the more pathology that forms, because inevitably, the more micro stresses there are on the central nervous system. And that has a direct impact in a long enough time frame on your biology. So like the typical example would be like, okay, they're 40, 45, and they're like a director at a company, and they may have gotten that position for the safety, security, consistency of that work in order to help their biology survive better. But they're 40 or 45, they're on a bunch of medical drugs, they're very physically sick. So the irony is they went into that position or went into that path for the biological safety, but it's that exact path that's deteriorating their biological safety altogether. I don't know if you've seen these patterns. I mean, for me, it's like a lot of people, of course, it's not like what you do, it's how you do it oftentimes. And I do feel like if you don't have kids, working a hardcore corporate job, it's still possible to really maintain your physical and mental health. But for the most part, I mean, especially doing corporate lectures for a while, it's like literally almost impossible to find a healthy person in a corporate environment. I'd say like just go play the lottery, dude, because you have a better chance of winning that than to find a genuinely healthy person. And the scary part is if you talk to them, they're like, I'm completely fine.
Yeah. Yeah. I was at a conference last week that was not related to health and fitness at all. I'll just say it's a financial conference. Yeah, I would say 2/3 of the room was sick.
Oh, that's a
You
low
know,
number.
and
Wow. It must
there
be.
there were some fit people there. Well, these are all entrepreneurs.
Got it.
So but they're, they're, everyone in that room was there for the purpose of improving their financial position. And so, I find, entrepreneurs by nature are going to be, more aware of, reality, and are more likely to take care of their health and find the correlation between physical health and mental performance. And even so, but most people, they put the finances on this pedestal, and they think, like you're saying, they think they're fine, but I'm like, dude, you're sweating just standing here talking to me. You're like sweating and like out of breath, and like I'm gonna walk 20 minutes back to my hotel room tonight at 10 o'clock, and they're like, no way they could ever do that. They're like, oh, I got to call a cab. And yeah, it is interesting. Yeah, I don't know about, yeah, when you're talking about people who are in the corporate environment, I don't work with as many. I don't work with hardly anybody in the corporate environment, so I don't see that. Yeah, I just imagine that what you're saying is accurate. The biological cost of consistently ignoring your own internal, your heart and your spirit. You definitely, your physical body has to break down.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think you just can't ignore the fact that, over, 200,000 years of evolution via the Homo sapien, and then, you had about 28 human species that have come and gone over 2+ million years. It's just at the end of the day, you haven't evolved to A, be on a strict schedule 24/7, B, sit in front of a computer all day, C, have a lot of micro stresses in your life. Just the central nervous system is not good at dealing with that at all. And unfortunately, in those environments, you have the combo of micro and macro stresses, constant, chronic,
Mm-hmm.
and stuff of that sort. And at that point, I mean, it's like, dude, I don't even care how much like biohacking workout programs you get on, unless you fix that part and have your weekly schedule more aligned to what human biology has actually evolved to be like. It's not gonna, I mean, it provide maybe some short progress here and there. Maybe it's even questionable there, but at the end of the day, you're still not going to be thriving. Your health is still going to be declining week after week. And I see that often, especially with like fat loss clients. They could actually get on a fat loss program and successfully lose any amount of body fat they have. But if they stay in the environment where all of that fat gain has occurred, I mean, the chances of relapse is like almost 100% within a 3 to 4 year period. I see that again and again. That's why it's like one of the best things. Obviously, you got to change the internal environment that led it to acceptable to be in that external environment. But one of the biggest things I would say for people that are embarking on a fat loss journey is, dude, you got to get out of that environment where you found that you've gained all of that weight to begin with at the end of the day. There are no absolutes, and I'm sure some people can stay in the same environment and maintain that weight loss for the rest of their life. But that's like 1 out of every 100 cases. The other 99 cases for sure will regain their weight. And I don't know, like, I'm just asking you an honest question. I'm pretty sure the big mental and physical health breakthroughs you had coincided with huge shifts in your environment as well. Probably, maybe not.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in environment is, we have habit would be number one and environment number two. And number two can dictate number one quite a bit. And what I love about making a shift in your environment is you only have to make the shift in your environment one time. Like, say, leaving a job and getting another job, or like I don't have one of the best things I ever did was got rid of my TV. I haven't had a television in my house since 2013. It's been 10 years. And what do you do with your living room when you take the TV out? Like, you make an environmental change where I remove the television. It's like, oh, I got all this furniture pointing at a naked wall now. It's like, oh, that's interesting that my entire living room was situated in a way so it would optimize the viewing experience. And so then rearrange the furniture to be in a more communal way. And then I've had I always love it when I make new friends. I have them over to the house. They walk in the house, or this even happens with people that might be working on the house. Like, the guys came and worked on my AC or did the solar on my house or whatever. They come inside the house. I invite them in, and then as soon as they get inside, their whole system just down regulates. And I like watching people's face, especially like people who are working on my house, because they don't know me. And then they step into my house, so it's a bigger shift. They walk in, and then it's like, they always like walking in like they would walk in anywhere, and then they stop, and they look around. They're like, dude, it's so chill in here. It's so good. And my fiance and I made it our work. We decided to make our home a sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is our sanctuary. And so, and I've had friends over for dinner, like, oh, come over for dinner. We're going to hang out. We're eating. We're there for 2 or 3 hours. And then someone will say, oh, I just noticed you don't have a TV. I was like, yeah. And all of our furniture is set up to be communal. It was like, oh, we're not. And if you go over to their house, you sit on the couches and you're having to like reorient yourself so you could talk to somebody because it's optimized for television viewing. So all that to say, getting rid of the television and rearranging the furniture, I only had to do that one time. And now the rest of my life is healthier. I now have, it improved my relationships. It reduced the amount of time I spent looking at screens. I reduced the amount of exposure to psychological warfare. All these things I had a big reduction in, and I only had to make it once. I didn't have to change a habit. I didn't have to like will my way there. I just had to make a choice one time and say I'm done with it. And so the same thing could happen for work or whatever. One thing I want to mention is I remember I had this one client who was very, very overweight, obese, and he was coming into the gym, and I've had a couple of clients like this, like swears he's eating the way he's supposed to be eating. He's showing up to the gym 3-4 days a week, and he's not getting better. He's just not getting better. And I'm going, well, he's stressed. And so I remember there was a point in my personal training career where like early on, you know, especially when I was in my 20s, I didn't feel like I had any business asking anyone anything about their life that wasn't gym related or food related. And then it occurred to me, I go, oh, this is working with this guy was one of the things that highlighted it for me. I was like, dude, you know, talking about work. He's like, I don't know what to do. I'm like not losing weight and all this. And he looked terrible. And sat down, I was like, oh, you work for a pest control company, and you get paid $40,000 a year. You're working 60 to 70 hours a week, and there's no windows in your office. So you're sitting under fluorescent lights. It doesn't matter that you're coming to the gym. It doesn't matter that you ate the food you brought. You're sitting under fluorescent lights, being stressed out, hated his boss, but really was just afraid of his boss. Just terrified of the boss, afraid of losing his job, and wouldn't know what to do if he didn't. And so I was like, dude, you're gonna have to, I think you gotta quit your job if you want to get better. And he never did. And I didn't see him make any changes, unfortunately.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. I'm curious, have you ever been confused by the labels in the grocery store? In Yevgeny's book, he demystifies the difference between caged, cage-free, free-range, and pasture-raised meats. He also covers how to avoid GMOs, source high-quality water, fish, supplements, and other related topics. It's a beautifully illustrated, non-technical read that comes with a comprehensive video series and other extended learning materials. Jump on Amazon and check out the book titled Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide by Eugene Trufkin. Now let's dive back into the podcast.
Yeah, and I do see that consistently as well. And once again, even if they do make changes, it's fairly short-lived, because if they
Right.
stay in that toxic kind of environment, not necessarily like the boss is bad, but you just don't see eye to eye with them. You know, they may have like a different working style, and you got to take that into consideration, because oftentimes people are like, oh, I don't see eye to eye, so he's bad or something like that. I'm like, no, both of you could be fine. There's just a disconnect in terms of how you want to, you know, your core values, and also how you want to accomplish the work, et cetera, et cetera. And it's okay to go like, okay, we're both fine, but just not meant for each other. So I got to find a new job. But what Mike is saying to listeners is like, dude, that's what real medicine looks like getting out of toxic environments, you know, getting out of a job that doesn't facilitate your core values well, you know, not that it's a bad job, but it just might be a bad job for you, or an unsustainable job for you, you know, et cetera, et cetera. And that is what real medicine looks like. Because the reason you get sick is, one reason is an environment that doesn't facilitate your core values, an environment that's not sustainable. You're not supposed to be working 50, 60, 70-hour weeks, especially doing something you don't like week after week, you know, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not how the central nervous system has survived to function well. And I do feel one of the things that makes honest change tough, and I wanted to touch base with you on this one, is the financial aspect. You know, a lot of people know they don't like their job, but it's like they need the paycheck, right? And I feel
Right.
one of the things that's so important is so important in a health journey is to create that financial autonomy. You know, it doesn't have to be like millions of dollars a year, but enough to at least be able to disconnect from the cesspool of what society has become today and be able to at least match your base needs, you know, your essential needs, and not have to worry about actually aggressively working to meet those essential needs. So you can kind of step back and really kind of clear your head and then determine how to make money that's more facilitative of your core values and kind of whatever you think your mission is in life and stuff of that sort. I'm just wondering if what has worked for you to create that financial autonomy, or what tips you have for people and stuff of that sort.
Yeah. First, you need to have a vision of what you're achieving and why you're doing it. I think a lot of people, they're in survival and they live from paycheck to paycheck, and it's hard for them to even consider, what am I going to do after this weekend? You know, there's very little energy put into a vision of their life. I like to do, I sit down about every 6 months and I write out a 10-year vision. I actually did one last week. It's I wrote down, it's 2033. I'm 51 years old, and in the last 10 years, and then I just wrote down all the stuff I did in the last 10 years, and I wrote all in past tense. And I read that to my fiance, and it fired us both up. We're like, hell yeah, let's get after this. Okay, all right, now we're gonna have we have a weekly money date, and we look at all the money that we keep our personal finances in QuickBooks.
Mm-hmm.
So people don't need to do exactly what I do. I've taken it to the extreme. I realize that, but there's all sorts of tools. I like QuickBooks for personal, because the problem with a lot of the other like personal bookkeeping softwares is they're not really geared to help you track your net worth. And to me, the net worth number is more important than the income number. And so first off, you need to have a vision, and you need to be like actually paying attention to what's happening with your money. And what I do is I divide out and if anyone, there's a woman who taught me finance, that has a course that she will be launching again in a few months. You can reach out to me and I can put you in contact. Changed my life financially, going through her course. But I divide everything up into living expenses and luxury expenses. So living expenses is mortgage, groceries, note on my truck, gas, insurance. These are the things that if I were to change them, it would be very difficult to change them. Like, yeah, I could pay less mortgage. It means I'm going to sell my house and downsize in some way. And then I have my luxury expenses. And it's funny, is when I started the course, my luxury expenses were exceeding my lifestyle, my living lifestyle expenses. I was like, that's I could be doing better. I see a lot of waste there, but so it's good to know what your lifestyle expenses are, and then what your luxury expenses are, and know that your luxury expenses is where you have the most power. You can go, I'm gonna like eat out less. I'm gonna, I don't need to buy new clothes this month or whatever it is. So it's good to get an idea of what your monthly expenses are, and then identify what I like to do if you really want to go there. And so one thing's Jordan Peterson talked about this, and it's like there's a lot of doctors that had and lawyers that had a hard time speaking up against what was going on because they were going to lose their job, and they didn't. have, and Jordan Peterson had and there's a lot of people that had the financial ability to speak up, because they got fired from the university or whatever, they were okay. They'd taken care of themselves. So like, you're also you're way more susceptible to the whims of all of society if you're not financially independent. And I remember him talking about that. I was like, oh, that's an extra motivation for me. He's right. I remember with the pandemic and everything coming up on social media, I was like, I definitely censored myself. I was not as outspoken because all my leads came online, and I had friends lose their accounts forever that had hundreds of thousands of followers. It was not and lost their income. So, it had to
For a
tiptoe
conspiracy theory that ended up actually being the truth, not 9 out of 10
the
times.
conspiracy facts.
Yeah,
And,
conspiracy facts.
Yeah,
I like that. I'm going to use that, but I'll quote you if someone asks.
Good. Yeah,
Conspiracy facts.
facts. Like, come on. So what I did is listening to Jordan Peterson talk about this, going through this financial course. I go, okay, you got to find out what your enough number is. Like, what's the amount of money that if I were to have that income for a year, I could live my lifestyle and I feel good, right? And I know it. I was like, oh, there's like the number that I'm at now, and then there's the number I want to be at in 10 years. These are different numbers. The one in 10 years I want to be higher, and it should be, because inflation, and you probably want to live a bigger lifestyle later in life. So I figure out what that enough number is, and then I go, well, how can I create this in passive income?
I think that's the key that I wanted your opinion on.
Yeah, it's like okay, well, I'll just so like my enough number right now is 250,000, right? $250,000 in income a year, and I live, it feels simply to me, but I have friends that are definitely spending way more than that on their lifestyle. But my goal is, I'm not even allowing myself to spend more on my lifestyle until I am receiving that in passive income. So what I started to do when I had this realization, I go, not only do I want to have secure income, I want to have like really secure passive income. Because if I'm receiving $250,000 a year passively, what does that do for my creativity? What does that do? How can I be involved in some nonprofits? How can I help people that otherwise wouldn't be able to be helped or whatever? It's like, I need my time back and my money. Like, I need money and time for these two things. So I got into real estate, and so real estate investing. And I go, okay. And certain types of real estate investing, you need more money than others, and assets to create a certain amount of passive revenue. But for me to be able to have $250,000 in passive revenue, I need about $2 to $3 million in real estate assets that are income producing. So I go, okay. Initially, I go, there's one way to do that, which is make money and then go and then just invest it and buy things. And so that's how most people think about real estate investing. And I go, is there another way? So I started digging deeper. I went down some real rabbit holes. I'm like, no, it's actually a lot faster, easier ways to do that. And so I won't bore you with all the details of that, but there are certain systems out there where you can, like the whole Rich Dad Poor Dad. If you read that book,
yeah, it's like one of the Bibles.
Yeah, it's.
I still listen to Kawasaki, his podcast from time to time. I just find him like kind of really funny. I just like listening to the guy in general. He's like, not to interrupt, but his funniest line, he's like, I tell people. I wish I could say it with his accent because it makes it exponentially funnier when you hear. He's like, I tell young people invest in real estate, and they go, I don't have the money, and I'm like, and I tell them, because you're an idiot. That's why,
Yeah.
Get the money,
Yeah. I had that idea of like, I remember I read his book when I was like 17 or 18. He's talking about other people's money and OPM, other people's money. I was like, I don't know. Like, I don't even know what that, like, what does that look like? Until you know, like, the specifically how that looks and see an example of it, it is hard to understand. Yeah, but I went down that rabbit hole, started real estate investing. I was able to, yeah, I did 2 deals and got $150,000 in equity out of it with no money out of my pocket at all. And so I was like, oh, and this is just deals that I did on the side. This isn't interfering with my work. And it's not that much time. I'm like, oh, there is and real estate is not about properties. Real estate is a finance game. There are lenders, there are borrowers, there are, it's like a lot of administrative work, and it's finance and numbers and interest rates and yada, yada, yada. And it's good to know what's going on in the broader market, so you know how to set things up. So I just became a student of finance. And, there's a part of me that really resisted that because of all the stories that I grew up with regarding people who were wealthy, and, wealthy people are assholes and can't be one of those people and this and that. And another thing that really motivated me to master finance, because I'm in the process of mastery with it, is I'm part of 2 nonprofits to help veterans with PTSD, TBI. And for both organizations, the only limiting factor from them helping more people is money. It's the only limiting factor. Like, there are people who are willing to do the work, that want to work with veterans, but they can't dedicate their life to it because they need to work a job to pay their bills. You got to be able to provide jobs through nonprofit. And I want to be able to dedicate more of my own time into these nonprofits. And so I look at that and I go, am I going to be like, oh, I'll be involved in the nonprofit, and, I'll dedicate my time and this and that, and I'll just have to fucking wait for someone else to pay for everything? No. It's like, I'm not going to be one of those people waiting around for some rich guy to come along and pay for it. It's like, I get to master finance. And then if I start talking to people who are going to donate large sums of money to this thing, I need to be able to speak the language of finance to those people. And so that was just added motivation to go, oh, I mean, the finance game it's made up by a bunch of people, like, it's a bunch of numbers and letters, and, it's very conceptual in a lot of ways. And so it's not a game that I ever thought that I would really enjoy. In fact, I was a business major in college. I got out of the Navy. I went to school. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I figured a business degree couldn't hurt. I got to business school. Like, before, like a third of the way into the semester, I realized I was going to fail accounting. It didn't make sense to me. It was like one of those things where I got into class, there was no context. The instructor just started talking about debits and credits, and I was like, yeah, but why debits?
You just got to make
credits?
it equal 0 at the end. Come on, how hard could it be?
Exactly.
You just got to.
Exactly. And I was like, damn, like, I felt like such an idiot. I'm like, it's accounting. And so I ended up within a third of that semester, I realized that there's a exercise and sports science program. I didn't even know you could study that at university. And I was like, well, I'm going to do summer school as an exercise sports science major and see if that's a better fit for me, because I love that already. I'd already been training for 9 years and studying and nerding out on everything. And I go to that degree program, and I end up going from like failing like intro to accounting to ruining the curve in like exercise physiology and kinesiology. Like, and I took physics and was fine. It wasn't math. Math wasn't the problem. It was, there was something about the context of money that was throwing me off.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed exercise science. That's where my heart was at. And so now when I look at the financial piece, is the reason it's easier for me now is like I have a big enough why. Okay, I want that. I have that financial freedom. For me is passive revenue covering all my lifestyle expenses. And when that's in place, what do I get to do? How do I get to show up for my family? How do I get to show up for these military veterans? Until I'm going to show up the best I can for those people while I build this. But once I build that, I know that I'm going to be on another level. And so that's a bigger why. So you got to have a vision of the future of why you're doing this and remind yourself of that every day. And then you may end up like I enjoy finance now. Like I hang out with these like real estate dudes and I'm talking to them and I'm pretty good at it. You know, it's like it's all very logical. In fact, like it's basically finance is very logic based, and then the sales part I've been selling for 15 years, so just take a lot of sales skills because you're buying and selling money is what you're doing, and yeah, it's interesting. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and for the listeners, I think like what Mike said is like super important. And it maybe in the beginning phases, it is tough to do it all the time, but really being careful with not buying kind of quote unquote luxury items or non-essentials without having passive income pay for that, with actually using your actual like dollar per hour wage to pay for those luxury expenses. I think that's where people get stuck in that quicksand their entire life. Like I mentioned in the beginning, just between freaking travel and non-essential expenses, if people just eliminated that, the average American just eliminated those two from their annual expenses, you're looking at like 12 to 20,000 saved per year, just right there, by simply not eating out, not drinking alcohol, not having subscription services, and not traveling. And that's enough money to at least get the ball rolling in some other project,
Yeah.
or do something like what you're doing in terms of learn how to use other people, like investors' money, basically to launch your ideas, et cetera, et cetera. But stuff of that sort. And also, Mike has a grand vision of 250,000, which is great, but maybe some things that's really, so it's not too intimidating for a lot of people. Just learn at least how to cover your base expenses, with passive income by living initially, maybe like a minimalist lifestyle, It could be great for your mental health by decluttering your life too, not having so many moving variables around. And then kind of once you establish that, and once you at least have respectable levels of mental and physical health and are able to be autonomous, I think you mentioned that is very important too, because that way you can be yourself, If
Yeah.
something doesn't work out with this job, okay, well, I really don't need the income to match my base expenses. I can come over here, create another game plan, and then maybe launch another project over here. But you don't have to feel like you're stuck in that path because you need the paycheck to even match your base expenses, because if not that, then you're out on the street. Then when you have to nest in that kind of environment, I think that's what leads to a lot of mental and physical pathology, because you have to form maladaptive behavior to deal with that day in and day out. You have to. There's no other way out. And the only other way out in the extreme circumstance is like just suicide, and that's it, So maladaptive behavior is basically a way of just avoiding the grand finale, or whatever you want to call it,
Yeah, my friend Max Schenk just says most people are committing suicide. Some are just faster than others.
Yeah, and I think maybe the ones that are taking longer are just really good at the maladaptive behavior, most definitely, and stuff of that sort. But this is kind of like an off topic, and I was just wondering if I could, and it kind of goes into with being stuck in past, and I think you're a great person to touch on this, but I was just wondering like what you think of like, especially when kind of like, I guess I have to rewind and looking back at the purpose of the central nervous system, just a quick synapse. Like what's its only purpose is just to increase your survival, right? And the ability to navigate in the external world and survive better. And I feel like one of the ways it does that is by making you believe like you actually have a purpose in your life, But if you put put aside like your ego, it's like if you look at it objectively, like I think there's no purpose. Like there's like billions of galaxies and billions, if not millions of stars per galaxy. And we're like an invisible, Earth is like an invisible speck in the Milky Way galaxy. And if Earth just like blew up right now, like the universe wouldn't even notice anything's missing. And we're like an invisible speck on that floating rock in Earth. And then all of a sudden some neurotransmitters come together and you have a conscious perception of those neurotransmitters after the fact. And you're like, oh, I have a purpose in life, you know? I think it's like literally no purpose whatsoever, which is a great thing. It kind of sounds negative, but I think it's great because you don't have to be too attached to any one path in life, be it like spiritual or whatever you want to call it. And just know that like when it's like no longer serving you, and signs of it no longer serving you is if you're like physically and mentally not well all the time. That's a big red flag right there. Dude, just feel to discard it, like without even needing to analyze it. You don't need to figure out what your mom did or what your dad did 40 years ago that led to your situation. There's no reason for it. Like literally just discard it because there's like no purpose in it whatsoever. And you could just adapt a new
Well, I wouldn't say there's
definition.
no purpose.
And it's
So
so yeah, if you don't agree with that, it's okay too.
yeah, well, I think that like the initial premise what you're talking about is like that there's a freedom and choice, right? Like you get to choose your purpose. So a lot of times we're like, oh, there's no purpose, and then it's like they become nihilistic, and it's like, oh, you know, why should I've been there before. Why should I even care? Like, there's nothing to care about. I'll just go live under a bridge. You know, I don't have a purpose. And then the really cool thing is you could choose your purpose, right? And so a lot of people get in this place. I remember I did Landmark Forum, Landmark Education. I don't know if you're familiar. It's a personal development program. They basically get people to a place where they realize that like everything is actually meaningless, and it's a space of nothing is the most powerful place to create from, because you, like you were saying, like you clear that space out, and then now you can make a choice from nothing, where you're not being informed by the past on what your future is going to look like. So I think that there's a lot of power in that, and it takes most people aren't going to hear that and go, I don't think so, feel empowered by it. It's going to be more like, oh, this feels disempowering. What am I doing here? And I think we live in like we're having a meaning crisis. I think that's at the core of a lot of what's going on with the planet right now, is that everyone is working so much and just in survival. They don't actually have a sense of purpose. They don't have there's no meaning to what's going on, and there's too much information to be able to understand what they can't make meaning of just the simplest thing, right? And so yeah, there's all that, and these are just like, I'm just throwing out like different perspectives, but the perspective that I hold on this whole conversation is there's two ways in which there's two worldviews I've identified. The most common worldview is that the physical world and the matter of this world creates consciousness, right? The nervous system comes together, and consciousness is created from this physical world. The other worldview, which is much harder to stabilize, is that consciousness is the creator of all material world. So, and it's harder because it's what is the material world creating consciousness is basically how everybody, that's all of society. That's, if you look at biology textbooks, you look at scientific textbooks, this is the frame in which our entire society was built. It was a very materialistic perspective, or it's called a scientific materialism. And so the frame that I work to hold is consciousness is creating all of reality. And so when I'm holding that frame, I go, well, if consciousness is creating reality, there has to be some type of purpose. And the purpose, way I like to identify purpose, and the way that I've identified my own personal mission, and I think that your purpose and mission changes throughout life. I think a lot of people get stuck on, I've got to identify that one purpose, and so I know what to dedicate my life to. But this is where like your ancestry and what happened with your parents 40 years ago comes in really beautifully, is that we get to translate that. We get to translate what I was and where I came from into something that's much more loving. So, for instance, I grew up and I loved to fight. Right, I was a fighter. Um, I um, I was very competitive, especially with men. I would do things to sabotage other guys. It was all unconscious, and so, and I would do it by just like messing with people. Like right before some moment, I just mess with them to trip them up. Throw just one word, just to screw with their head, and it's totally unconscious. And then I became aware of it. I became aware of this competitive nature. Unhealthy competitive nature, and also this love of fighting. And I go, wow, what do I get to translate that into? I mean, I love fighting so much that I try to go to war, and so the opposite of that would be peace. And I go, oh, so that's my mission. My mission is, how do I bring peace to myself? How do I bring peace to others? And I've translated competition to brotherly love, and so that's another mission I have, is how do I create more brotherly love in my own life and with the rest of the world. And so I think the hardships, the burdens, the wounds, the whatever it is you want to call it from the past are there, that things that are perceived to be a weakness. Our job is to identify those and say, I'm going to make that a strength. I'm going to take everything that, all the energy that I was putting into fighting now goes into peace. It's not an easy thing to do, but it's a task worth doing. And I'm going to take all this competitive nature I have, and I'm going to transform that into brotherly love. And when I made the choice to do these things, my experience of other men changed. I started seeing the genius in other people, and one of the things that was really cool when I made that shift is I noticed that in business, I would compare myself to like these other guys in business would just throughout the day just fall into my mind and torment me on how I'm not doing as good as they are, or how I should be doing better than them because they suck, or whatever it is. And when I really started making a conscious choice towards that, a lot of that went away. And so, if everybody were to take on, oh, what are these perceived weaknesses from my ancestors? Because I mean, you're half your mom and half your dad. Like that's who
I
you
was
are.
actually made in the USSR war factory. I just kidding. Obviously, you know.
But you're like half your mom and half your dad, and you're carrying on their legacy, whether you like it or not. And there are things that you didn't like about your mom and you didn't like about your dad. And there was things you loved about them too. And uh, people tend to repeat the past. They take those things from their parents, who they got it from their parents, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
And we get to transform those things. And to me, that's a great purpose to have. And if we pursue that purpose, uh, that is health. That is I think health becomes inevitable in that case.
Have you ever noticed, I don't know your opinions on it, but touching on kind of like what you just mentioned, a lot of times it's just in the labeling, right? like any kind of emotion that arises always starts as some kind of like physical, like say like energy in the body. And then based on the person's experience, they kind of label that energy as like good, bad, evil, good, whatever. And like a good example is like, oh, there's some energy that arises, and then um, let's say it's labeled as like emptiness, and then you can build an inference on it. Oh, I feel empty because I'm depressed, and then build infinite inferences from there of why you're depressed. And it's kind of one group of people, let's say a group that's in the depression crowd, you know, has like depression all their life. They're trying to avoid this emptiness. But another group of people, like the meditators, are trying to go towards the emptiness. So it's like oftentimes like really just a lot in the labeling, you know. So going back to just a lot of the freedom of the choice, if you um, just kind of, I guess, really think about it. I mean, any kind of emotion arises just first as a kind of like a sense of energy without any label, you know, and then based on your personality and programming, then you label it and then kind of base your life off of that label. But oftentimes it's just like that false self that's labeling the energy and kind of leading you down like basically false paths your entire life into the wrong core values, into the wrong jobs, into the wrong
Yeah,
relationships,
there's
etc., etc.
yeah, there's a deep subject. I love it. There's a book called The Five Personality Patterns, and one I think you'd really appreciate it because he takes different. He basically says there's five different personality patterns, and based on which pattern you are is going to dictate how your physical body looks. So somebody that has an aggressive pattern is going to have like a big poofed up chest, you know, like one of their strategies is to create fear anytime they feel fear, create fear in others. You might have a merging pattern. An emerger is somebody who experiences someone else's energy and then they merge with that energy in order to feel safe, right? And it's all about creating safety. And so energy, emotions, this is the language of the body that was formed before we had language on board, right? So 7 years old is usually when, you know, that part of the brain gets fully formed enough to where we have full language on board and we can make meaning and there's distinction and we can start thinking that things are true or not true. That happens around 7. And so before that, our primary language is energy. And so a lot of psychology is thinking of, oh, how are the emotions being interpreted? That's one piece. How are we interpreting the energy in the body? And but before the words ever came online,
Mm-hmm.
there was children are seeking safety energetically. They don't know how to say something to feel safe or act a certain way, or they learn to act a certain way. But depending on how they make a choice as a child on how to deal with that energy, mom and dad are fighting in the other room. You know, do I then get loud too? You know, we've seen those children who mom and dad are fighting all the time, and that kid they scream a lot, and so they learn an energetic pattern, and the energy actually flows in the body in different directions based on, and there's 5 big patterns. I think he came out with 2 more. He's getting more refined around it. And I've used this a bit in my coaching. Is like, I go, oh, I can look at somebody. I go, oh, merging pattern. Oh, enduring pattern, aggressive pattern. And I don't know what's going on in their head, but I know how they cope with energy. So I'm looking at things at an energetic level first, and then how are they interpreting that energy? And so there's gifts and there's shadows and how that energy expresses for each person. So labeling is one part of it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm having this. Like a lot of people are talking about anxiety. I feel anxiety. I'm like, you know, or you know, what was it? Anxiety and excitement are pretty much the same thing. It's up for interpretation, and it's there's energies and there's emotions that we get uncomfortable with, and we have strategies for suppressing them, or for even suppressing them, or so what I'm looking for is like letting the steam out, diffusing it. Like I can let it out slowly and controllably, and I can get it out, but it didn't really get to fully express. And so, to the work that I've done and the work that I like to do with people is, how do we get you with any energy that comes up in your body is just a signal that you get to witness and
Mm-hmm.
it's there. And if you can be in full acceptance of that emotion, that energy, and you can learn to be with it in peace, then you'll notice that it actually passes very
Mm-hmm.
quickly.
Yep.
Sadness will pass like that. That feeling guilty will pass like this. Like children on a playground don't, before they have words, don't, they may be hitting each other one minute and loving on each other the next minute. It's like, seem like they're crazy people, but really they're not doing what you were talking about, which is they're not labeling and dwelling on and making something right or wrong. They're just having the experience, and then, plus without language, you're not really experiencing space and time the same way. So there's no, oh, I'm going to make my partner, I'm going to be mad at my partner for 5 days so that she'll, learn the lesson, like I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
hold on to this for a while or whatever. So, yeah, all these energies are, I think, going back to the education system. 5 years old, sit at a desk, you feel sad, you feel excited, whatever you do, just be stoic. You're actually not allowed to be too happy or too sad or too anything. You got to be right.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be even, or else we're going to give you drugs, or we're going to stop you from having your recess. And so we have an entire population of people who don't even know how to be with their own energy. And that's one of the things that I mean when I say people don't know themselves. They're
Mm-hmm.
cut off from themselves. They're not comfortable with their emotions. And when they come up, they just suppress them, and then they're doomed to live in the illusion of their mind.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I mean, especially in Western cultures, I think we're rewarded for denying your humanness.
Mm-hmm.
It all
Mm-hmm.
starts with, like, of course, little things like don't go to the bathroom here, or don't go to the bathroom there. You know what I mean? Or, oh, look at little Timmy. He's going to sleep on time all the time, although he's full of energy. You know what I mean? You're kind of just rewarded for not being a kid, basically. And this
Right.
kind of goes on throughout the whole entire life. And unfortunately, reinforced by also a lot of health leaders, like, oh, like sleeping is for the weak. 5 hours is all you need a day, like grind it out. Your
Yeah.
emotions don't mean anything, blah, blah, blah. And of course, there are no absolutes. There's a time and place for everything. Like that type of mentality might work in the military. At the end of the day, no one wants to charge that trench, but hey, sometimes it has to be done. And so there's a time and place for everything. But I think it's misapplied 99.9% of the time and put on chronic use, which is the worst of all. And then you're just denying your, um, like you mentioned, with your energy, you're altering it. You know what I mean? You're trying to change it in a sense that you should just, if anyone kind of perceives it, I mean, just like with any type of emotion or titled emotion as energy, it's kind of like it comes out of nowhere. Like you mentioned, it has a beginning, it stays for a little bit, and then it subsides into nothing. And it comes out of nothing, stays for a little bit, and subsides it. And if you just experience that energy without the label and just experience it fully by taking the label off of it, you will see, like you said, it does stay there. It loses its potency almost right when you take the label off of it. And then it kind of lasts for a little bit and it subsides. Because how could you be angry at a labelless energy? It doesn't have a label. It's just kind of like a physical sensation in your body with no label.
It's
And I know
always
this,
moving.
yeah, and I know this probably sounds super crazy and out there for a lot of listeners. They're like, okay, we'll stop listening at this point. But it totally makes sense. If you look into it, you will see what he's saying is 100% true. Once you take that label off of it, it really loses its sting, or
Yeah. It's
correlation to any kind of meaning.
like the weather, it's shit's changing throughout the day, throughout the year. It's having a much larger cycle, much larger realm. So it may appear slower, but yeah, there's a constant movement of energy. Sometimes people are like, oh, I'm not feeling anything right now. You go, interesting. Like you are, you're just not aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
That energy is doing something. You'd be dead if you didn't have any.
Well, on one more important topic, I was just wondering, what, since we're on this topic here, what's your take on where does psychiatry fit into the health services? What's your honest take on it?
Well, I'm glad you asked. My fiance is a psychotherapist by trade, so she's licensed, and she also works in the psychedelic field. And so one of the things that we found is she runs something called APP, Altered Psychedelic Practitioners, where we get licensed and unlicensed. You know, people have been carrying a lineage for thousands of years, and people who just got their license, and we're putting them in the same room and having them consult with each other. And in the beginning, so when her and I first met, I was coming from this alternative, like much more spiritual context in regard to the psychedelic medicines, and she was coming from academia. She was corporate psychology, like at a hospital, like as corporate as you can get, Kaiser Permanente. And she was like, these coaches and these shamans, and I'm not sure they know what they're doing. And I was like, I'm not sure your people know what they're doing.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that. I'm like, dude, let's look at the results
I
here.
was like, all right. This will be a fun. This will be
That's the first date conversation.
Yeah. First date was like, oh, you're a psychotherapist. This probably won't go anywhere. And then like 15 minutes in, she's like, yeah, but I'm going to quit my corporate gig, travel, and do psychedelic medicine. I'm like, okay, well, in that case, I'm with you. I'm like, all right, there might be something here. Yeah. And so where we've gotten, you know, me coming from, I have no like academic psychological training at all. Most of mine is experiential. I've sat with, I don't know how many different shamans. I've traveled the world. I've had mentors in the spiritual community. I've gone deep. I've gone. When I talk to a typical psychotherapist, I can usually run circles around them.
Mhm.
And so somebody's going to be offended out there. I welcome it. Let's do it.
No,
Let's.
it's okay. Offend all you want.
Yeah, no.
You can
Like,
repeat the
I'm
same line
inviting
10
them. Like
times to really know.
I can have an Instagram live with a psychotherapist. Or
Yeah.
anyways, my fiance is a great psychotherapist, and one of the things that we found is that the majority of the value from forming these groups is actually having the people that have the ancient wisdom quickly. We're like, oh, we need to get this ancient wisdom in the hands of the licensed therapist as fast as possible, because all the psychedelic medicine is getting authorized by the FDA, and they're authorizing only, you have to be a licensed psychotherapist in order to work with people with these medicines, and so on and so forth. And we have interacted with some people who are, I'll say this, we've interacted with people who are very on the corporate side of psychedelic medicine, that's working directly with the FDA and the US government to get all this stuff done. And they're authorizing specific types of therapy, and it's fucking scary.
What do you mean? What's so scary about it? I'm not too aware of that universe, so it's all new to me.
It's it's like they're trying to take everything good out of it.
I thought that's what corporate America's best
yeah,
at, you know.
the therapies are super basic, and I mean basic, and it's just like not it's not these aren't the therapies that good therapists are using these days.
Yeah.
And so and they're really trying to, to me, it almost seems like they're trying to make the therapy not that good. And so look, the government's going to do whatever it's going to do. You know, these corporations and the FDA, we all know how that actually works. I think RFK said it really good on Rogan's podcast recently. He was talking about how the regulatory boards are no longer regulating. They're just partnered with pharmaceutical companies, and with USDA just partnered with Monsanto. And, you know, these are partners. They're not being regulated.
It's crazy how a lot of people still don't believe you when you say that. I wrote that second book, you know, Anti-Factory Farm Shopping Guide. And it's
Yeah.
just kind of weird when you tell people this, they look at you like you're like some loony or something. I'm like, dude, all this information is free on Google. I'm not even like the investigator. It's just all out there, like in
Yeah.
plain daylight, like right
Yeah.
in your face. And they're like, nah, you're just
Yeah.
crazy. You're not the expert. I'm like, dude, you're just dumb. I'm like, I'm sorry. It's just like what it
Yeah.
comes down to.
Critical thinking just
Zero.
left the room. So, yeah, I think that when I look at psychiatry, so I'll think about it. So we've made it our goal, like our mission with APP. If anyone wants to check it out, go to alteredpractitioners.com, and you can see the mission statement there. You can see the code of ethics. You can see all the stuff that we're up to, and the mission is get the ancient wisdom in the hands of these therapists as fast as possible, because the government's going to do whatever they're going to do. How can we mitigate the harm? So, you know, their job, you know, everyone's trying to mitigate the harm of anything, right? Like they're trying to make it safe. That's always the excuse anyways. And so it's like, okay, I'm not going to go to DC. I'm not going to go lobby. That's not the best use of my time. I'm so freedom loving that the idea that I'm going to spend my energy trying to influence people whose job is to boss other people around sounds really fucking dumb. And so we go, look, we're going to do this a different way. We're going to just do it from the root. This is grassroots. We're going to get everyone together, and then by the time all the whatever comes down the pipeline, we've already infected the therapists with good knowledge and wisdom. They can't unknow this now that they've been exposed. And you know, there's therapists that get in a group and then learn, like, you know, someone's talking about purging or energy or any of these things, and the psychotherapist is like, can you tell me what that is? And I, you know, I'm not in any of the groups. I just help on the back end of things. But I'm like, wow, there are therapists that don't know anything about energy or about purging, or, you know, purging energy.
Or about how to be healthy themselves.
Yeah, and it's fascinating.
That's...
Well, yeah, yeah, I mean, and psychiatry is no different than the rest of the medical community. Like, you know, you got fat doctors you got fat cardiologists, right? And you have sick oncologists, and you have, you know, I think the dentists are the only ones that, you know, take care of themselves. Take care
Is
of teeth.
it? I thought it was like the optometrists. I see optometrists a lot of times are in like pretty good shape, but pretty
Oh,
much
yeah.
the rest of the medical community is like a complete disaster.
Yeah.
Like on the best day.
Well, all my dentists have been in great shape, but yeah, I think they suffer the same thing, very symptom oriented. The fact that, like, here's the thing, really good psychotherapists and psychologists and psychiatrists, their hands are tied in the medical system, because they have to assign a symptom to people using the DSM. And basically they're going to have to, if insurance is going to pay for it or whatever, they have to write that this person has XYZ, and then that becomes a label. Going back to the labels, this becomes a label that the person, they believe it because the person in the lab coat, the psychotherapist, has authority in their mind. So if they say it, they believe it. Oh, I have anxiety, as if it's a possession. And so they're now possessed with anxiety because that psychotherapist, they validated that I have anxiety. And how hard is it going to be for that person to get rid of anxiety now that they know that they have it and they're possessed by it? Like, they can't, like, they provided a very stable, sturdy label for them to hang that on, and it becomes an excuse for everything in their life.
Yeah, and for anyone listening to this, I mean, like, of course, Mike and I aren't your doctor, thankfully, but the chemical imbalance theory of mental illness, I don't know if anyone still even believes in that. It's been disproven like a very long time ago. You guys can go on PubMed.gov, literally try to find one study to prove me wrong. You'll be surprised that you're not going to. And go ahead and just do your research. Prove me wrong. Prove Mike wrong. Just go, do your research. Don't take someone's word on face value. All I'm asking, it's like to also honestly ask yourself, you've been going to therapy or your psychiatrist and on these medical drugs for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. This is just an honest question. Can you honestly say you're doing better? Can you honestly say that? And I would say, for my observation, most people aren't going to honestly say they are genuinely doing better. And especially, they're most never going to say that they've come to a resolution of their symptom. It's like 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years later, hundreds of thousands of dollars, not tens of thousands of dollars in therapy. They're still working on their dad stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, it's like, I'd never see, first of all, they also never treat like the physical health of the person, which impacts their mental health, and most people are physically ill these days too. So you got to meet the problem at the level of the problem as well. And I mean, there's like a myriad of things wrong with that. They also just deal a lot of times, I feel, with the false self. And it's like, that's not even who you are. So why worry about changing the good or the bad of it or tinkering this that's not even like who you are anyways. You're like in the wrong house. Why even, I don't care. I don't care how good you fix it. You're in the wrong damn house to begin with,
Yeah.
Get to the right address to get started with. But
accurate. Yeah, I mean, look, we could sit, I think you and I could probably sit all day and pick apart the things we don't like or the things we think are a problem with some of these institutions. But at the end of the day, it's like you were saying, it's results. Like, what is the result? Okay, what do I think about psychiatry and psychology in the United States right now? I'm like, it actually doesn't matter what I think, because all we got to do is look at the result. We have massive mental illness, like more than ever. That means whatever we're doing is not working. I'm not going to tell you exactly what about it's not working, but to try to defend it as if it is working is shows a level of ignorance. And what I mean by ignorance is, I mean, you're actively ignoring, like ignorance.
Well, their paycheck depends on it, Mike.
Yeah,
they're not ignoring that part,
and the identity.
There's that aspect too. Yes.
And so there's what's happening with heart disease. Anything that's metabolic, that's like driven by nutrition primarily. What's happening there? It's like, oh, well, the food in the grocery stores are fucked. Like, track that back. You're going to find a bunch of corn subsidies, I promise. And, it's, these things aren't working. The medical system is not working. We are the sickest country. We're one of the wealthiest and the sickest. And, it's not for a lack of resources that we're not healthy. It's literally people are doing the wrong thing and they think it's the right thing. So
yes.
Anytime anything becomes mainstream, I just immediately go, well, what's the fucking opposite of that?
Just do that.
I'm curious about that, and that's what got me into the psychedelics like a decade ago. I was like, oh, they're telling me not to do it. I found this one research paper that says that it improves gray matter density. Oh, it doesn't turn your brain into a fried egg like they said in the commercials in the 80s. It actually can heal your brain. I'll give it a shot. And then you go, oh, okay, well, what else are they lying about? Okay. And when I say lying, I mean lying to themselves.
They're openly lying to the public too. It's okay to say that, because that is what's happening, especially with the myriad of lawsuits with the pharmaceutical companies that they face endlessly. It's almost part of their business practice, just damage control for these lawsuits. And they kind of factor that into their cost benefit analysis for their campaigns and stuff of that sort. Yeah. Just know, anyone on this call, like, dude, you are on your own. Just know almost no one in the health field, like, gives a care about you at all. like almost no one. There's some great practitioners out there for sure, but it's far in between, and a lot of them are extremely overworked and rushed. You know, the average person gets only 2.5 minutes with the doctor before they're interrupted and the diagnosis is given to them.
Yeah.
That's like super crazy. And a lot of people find that acceptable. So I challenge people on this call, when you get that kind of service, call the practitioner out on it, you know? Or
Yeah.
just if you don't want any.
Get my blood work done 3 times a year, and I get 45 minutes with my doc, and I challenge them on things, and they teach me things, and sometimes I teach them something. And dude, that's how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it should be. There are good doctors. You're gonna pay for it. Those aren't, my insurance isn't paying for that.
Yeah, I was just going to mention, like, the good practitioners aren't going to take insurance anyways, you know?
Look, they even if they want to care, the system doesn't allow them to. You know, I want to care, but I only have 5 minutes with you, or 2.5 minutes. Like, even if I can, it's like the care is ground out of them the same way creativity is ground out of kids in school. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, it's just, you can't exist in that system and thrive. It's not going to work. You know, every good doctor I know doesn't, you know, they've stepped out of that system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And by the way, I know great doctors.
Yes.
I know great psychotherapists. I know great psychiatrists. There are fucking awesome people that have these pieces of paper, and it is I love them to death. And like I said, my fiance being one of them. But the industry as a whole, we have problems.
Yeah, and I'll just say some go-to red flags for people. I mean, if you walk into the first time assessment and they're like spending 2 to 5 minutes with you, I mean, that's an instant red flag right there, you know? And then they're kind of throwing some medicine at you and stuff of that sort. Once again, no absolutes. I had some gnarly ear infection when I went to Hawaii back in 2011 that spread to my jaw. And I did take antibiotics for it, you know? Maybe I could have weathered it. I don't know, probably gotten better. But I just got concerned over a 24-hour period. I couldn't even open my jaw. So I just took the medical drugs, obviously, and I got better. So there's a time and place for it, for everything. What Mike and I, moreover, are saying are health problems that arise from chronic behavioural issues that lead to those health problems, etc. And relying on medical drugs to treat those symptoms instead of changing the behavior that led to all those problems to begin with. That's the main thing. So
Western medicine is especially good at acute injuries. So something that came on quickly, broken legs, punctures, you know, something where you get jacked up, or you get one of these strange infections that need to be taken care of swiftly. Great. We have the best medicine on the planet, maybe since ever, in that regard. But for the chronic disease, you know, like management of diabetes, cancer, heart disease, mental illness, these are all things that these chronic issues, Western medicine is not designed to be beneficial there.
Got it. Well, Mike, it was great to have you on. I'm happy to continue to talk. If you have any other topics you have in mind, we kind of covered like the stuff I wanted to cover with you, but do you have anything else in mind you would like to voice? Happy to give voice to it. So,
man, no, I think we covered a lot of ground here. I feel very complete.
Yeah, I feel like we could keep going on, but I think the message is obvious, you know, for people that are looking to go on an honest health journey, which isn't easy. You know, we're not selling it like a quick fix. And one other thing, I hate when people say quick fixes because they never fix anything. You know, it would make sense if it actually fixed it quickly, then okay, but quick fixes usually never work anyways. So, Mike, great to have you on. I got to know you first for many years back when Czech first started his podcast, and he had you on a guest. I think you're like one of his original, whatever, 20 or 30 guests or something of that sort. I kind of followed your podcast and stuff like that. So it was great to finally connect. I did see you at Paleo FX, I think last year, but I didn't actually stop by your booth because the booth was like busy, and I was like, you know, I'll say hi to him next time, but then I just walked off anyways. Although, honestly, like, I don't know what happened with Paleo FX last year. It didn't seem like almost anyone was there. I kind of showed up, drove from San Antonio to there, and then I was like, I showed up one of the days, and I'm like, oh, man, there's not that many people here this time.
No, it was yeah, they hit several speed bumps in a row that caused that. So I word on the street has it they'll be back next year
Got
full
it.
force. So
Got it. Okay. Well, I think we're on Thursday, kind of only work 2 days a week, so kind of lose track of exactly which day I'm on. We're on Thursday. So, guys, have a good rest of the week and a good weekend as well. And Mike, thanks for being on. It was great to see everyone. So, have a good one,
for having
everyone.
me. Thanks,
Okay.
Eugene.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning into the podcast. If you've ever had trouble losing weight, or you've lost weight, but still didn't have the ideal body or health you're aiming for, please feel free to reach out anytime and book an assessment. Eugene will work with you to cover your goals in detail, see what's holding you back, and go from there. In the meantime, feel free to check out the countless testimonials on Eugene's website in the link below. In the testimonial section, you'll notice everyone has various backgrounds, are of all different ages, and all have had different challenges in their life, but they all have one thing in common: they were all able to find their health and achieve their ideal body. You're also welcome to add yourself to the Facebook group in the link below. There you'll have access to the live videos that Eugene does weekly on Sundays, and other helpful content. Thank you again for tuning in.